Hello, my name is Lynette Zeitz. I'm the historian and manager of Urrbrae House, a historic house museum at the University of Adelaide's Wake campus in South Australia. Unfortunately, at the moment, museums around the world have had to close their doors to visitors. And so Brandon Thompson from the Gorgas House Museum at the University of Alabama asked if I might be interested in joining him in a video conversation, sharing our love of history and historic places and answering questions about our respective house museums. So Brandon asked me what was my favourite thing about Urrbrae House. And I actually found that a much harder question to answer than I first thought I would. I'm going to cheat and answer that question in two ways. One, I'm just going to talk about my favourite space in Urrbrae House, and that is the library. It's not as grand as some of the public entertaining rooms of the house. The house was built for Peter and Matilda Waite. They were Scottish migrants to South Australia. And by the 1890s, Peter Waite was chairman of a very successful agribusiness, Elder Smith & Co., and he needed a larger house to entertain as befitted his position in South Australian society by that stage. Also a house large enough for his family. I'm going to have to apologise. There's going to be some interruptions here. I'm working from home at the moment, as a lot of people are these days. And I have some neighbours who are doing some work on their house, and there's some background noise here. So please bear with me if there are some stops and starts in this video conversation. So going back to my favourite room, the current Urrbrae House was built in 1891, and it has about 20 main rooms, and my favourite space, as I indicated, is the library. And it's a smaller, more intimate space. It's lined throughout the room with bookshelves. They have decorative leather dust covers on them, which protects the books from dust. And I think the reason I love the space is that it has an intimacy that helps you imagine the lived lives of the Waite family who lived in Urrbrae House from 1892 to 1922. You can imagine Peter Waite and his daughters sitting in the tub chairs around the fire at night, perhaps reading a good book. Also, the thing I love about the library is it gives us some insights into the Waite family. Peter's books, we inherited some of Peter Waite's private collection, and the books range in subject matter from art to travel, literature, history, science, and it shows a little of Peter Waite's very eclectic interests. There are also books in the library that belong to the youngest daughter, Eva Waite, and Eva was a very keen gardener, and there are gardening books that she once owned in the library. And I guess on a personal note, I grew up in rural South Australia without easy access to library. My local library was a mobile library, basically a truck that brought books around to the nearest town a couple of miles away once a month. So for me, a space that people could sit and enjoy their own private collection of books is certainly a very magical space. And the second part of my answer to the question is the thing that I really love about Urrbrae House are literally the people and the storytelling. I have a very small staff team, but we have about 75 volunteers who support us in the house and in the surrounding gardens. Unfortunately, the volunteers can't come in and work with us at the moment, but they are a joy to work with a wonderful, very diverse group of people ranging in age from their early 20s to their early 80s. And the other part of the people that come to Urrbrae House are our visitors. And I think it's something distinctive about house museums, because they are a domestic space. When people walk into a house museum, they can relate almost instantly to the space and the objects they're in. Now, they may not have lived in such a grand house as Urrbrae House, but there will be something that a visitor will notice or comment on, that will stir up a memory of their own. A recent visitor earlier in the year noticed our charcoal iron and started telling me about how her grandmother used one of those and her memories of visiting her grandmother as a child. And one of the delightful things about my job is the shared storytelling that actually happens in the museum because of that. We impart the story of Peter and Matilda Waite and their family members, but we end up having visitors share all sorts of stories and memories with us. And so it becomes a very rich two-way interaction between us and the visitors. So I included a few photographs of the library in this video that I had on my hard drive at home. And now I want to turn Brandon's question back to him. What's one of your favourite things about the Gorgas House Museum? And a sub-question to that, is there something in your collection that you find particularly fascinating, and why? I look forward to hearing your answers and to continuing this conversation.